In about 15 minutes, you could create a monster for your game for free with animations, and I will show you how to do that. And of course, you might want to do some tweaking to the mesh and the texture, but even after 15 minutes, just the basic AI generated monster with the provided animations looks pretty good. And if you play with your lighting, this could even suffice for the game. I will be improving my Cthulhu monster in future videos. This is just a quick way to get started with an asset that looks really good. And the license for this is Creative Commons, I believe, so that you are able to use it in a commercial game as long as you give credit to the company. And this is all free. You need an account on Meshy.ai. And here it is, Meshy.ai can create a free account and you get a certain amount of credits, I think every month or something. I have a paid account now, but for free, you can get some really great assets. All you do is you can type in what you want, text to 3D. I have typed in humanoid sea monster, A pose. There's an A pose, there's a T pose. That's probably what you want for animating, giving your monster a skeleton. I also put legs angled apart, arms extended out to the sides, scary, strong, symmetrical, and human limb proportions. That's just going to help you for rigging this creature with an armature or a skeleton, because they're usually made for humans. This looks all right. I mean, the arms are pretty long, and we're not going to get animations for the tail that we would have to do ourselves. This guy looks pretty humanoid. And sometimes these can look silly, these meshes, but when you apply the texture, it will make it look a lot better. So you just click on the one you want. You can see this costs 10 credits to give it a texture. And that's going to take a little while. I'll show some of the previous meshes that I generated. This is a dragon. I wasn't going to animate this. It was just a little figurine. And here is a giant stone tiki totem. Scary, primitive, alien. No, it doesn't look very alien, does it? Here's another one. This is a good tiki. Now, when you first generate it, it's going to have a lot of faces, like 300,000 maybe, but then you can remesh it to have only 10,000. I mean, you really don't need 300,000 faces for a little tiki idol in your game. By faces, I mean polygons, and you can view those more easily. It says up here, triangle and how many faces. You can turn off the material with this button, and then you can turn on the wireframe. And you can see, because this is 300,000 triangles, it's insanely detailed. You don't need all that for a little prop. I did notice that my 10,000 face remesh was in quads, not triangles. So it's not exactly that it drops from 300,000 to 10,000. A quad is basically like 2 triangles. Don't worry too much about it, but I did notice when I remeshed, I had selected quads. I'm just more familiar with working in quads than triangles. Just keep it in mind when you're looking at the complexity. Actually look at it and consider if they're quads or triangles. Unreal Engine has to do calculations for each triangle. I believe they get converted to triangles in Unreal Engine. Don't take my word for that though. So yeah, the fewer the better for processing and efficiency. But of course, the fewer you have, then you might lose some of the curves and some of the details. Compromise. All right, this guy's done, our sea monster. He looks amazing, pretty good. Now you can see if you scale this creature very large, the texture might not be high definition enough. It looks like his mesh has some holes in it as well. You can't win every time, I guess. You know, you might have to make a few different monsters. You should have enough credits to try. You can only remesh to 10,000. You would need a paid account to do 30,000 or different custom numbers. You should be fine with 10,000 though. All right, so I have remeshed him down to 9,400 faces. And this should be easy enough to render in any VR game. You know, I kind of like the holes in his face. I'm going to go with it because this is supposed to be a 15-minute monster. So let's just go with this guy. That's scary, right? To have holes in your face. All right, so I could retexture him as well. For 10 more credits, if you didn't like that, you could type something else in and it will give him a different texture. The mesh will stay the same. Like I could say a cute pink sea monster. All right, and here he is. I didn't put a lot of detail like scales or anything, so he's just pink. Is he cute? I guess compared to this guy, he's cute. Now, if you have a paid account, you can rig the character with a skeleton right here in Meshy. By the way, this is not sponsored by Meshy. They have no idea who I am. I just pay them for my account. And I could just generate this stuff all day. I can't though, because even the paid account, you have a limited number of credits, though you have a lot more than the free account. I think another difference is that you actually own the meshes when you have a paid account, like it's private and it belongs to you. Otherwise, you are licensed to use it, but you don't actually own it. Okay, so look, he looks pretty good with that auto AI rigging. He's walking along very nicely, and there's all these animations you could choose. They don't always work out. It depends. Like this guy has very big arms, so some of the animations, his arms will probably end up going through his body or doing strange things. And don't worry, if you don't have a paid account, you can get pretty much the same animations and more on Mixamo. If you have heard of that before, if you've used it before, you know it's pretty great and it's totally free. And you are allowed to use those animations and characters in your game, I think. Now, for all this stuff I'm telling you about licensing, please check yourself because I have just asked AI. I have looked at the agreements, but I'm not a lawyer. And you can see some animations are more monster related. Now, in the free account, you can look at all that, but you can't export your animated creature. You would have to sign up for an account. I mean, a paid account. So again, this first generation is almost 200,000 faces. And then I've remeshed him to 10,000, and that's probably what I'll end up using. If you want your creature to look really good, maybe you might want the high polygon version, and that's fine too. You can try them both. Now, I think when we go over to Mixamo, if you have too many polygons, it might not work. But it'll definitely work with the 10,000 polygons. And here it is, Mixamo.com. You don't even need an account for this. Oh no, do you? I think maybe you do. It's free though. And then you can just drag your creature in there. And again, you have to drag these certain points onto your creature: chin, wrists, elbows, knees, and the groin. There are fewer of these markers than in the Meshy version. You had shoulders and things like that. And this can take a little while. Oh, he's gone straight into a dance because I think the previous character I was working on was doing this dance. And actually, his arms are not really going through his body. Amazing. You can see those sliders there on the right side. You can actually change the character's arm space and the speed of his movements and things like that. Of course, I don't really want my monster to be dancing. I want him to be doing scary things. Maybe like this, roaring. You can see if you type mutant there, there's these different mutant character movements that might work better for a monster because the proportions with the arms might work out better. Export with the skin if you want to have the whole character. I usually do at least the first time. We can import that FBX file that we got from Mixamo, and you can take a look at all these import settings. I think it usually automatically checks the right boxes, but you can compare yours to mine here. And it's always going to say there were issues with the import. It's usually this thing about smoothing, which I need to investigate. I'm not sure what that's about. It doesn't seem to really matter though. I know other people get that as well. And it's going to bring in all these different items: the skeleton, the skeletal mesh, the animation sequence, a physics asset, and the texture. And they will all be highlighted. I always make that mistake and I just drag something and it drags all of those in there. So make sure you unselect them all first and just choose the one you want, which in my case, I'm just bringing in the animation sequence. Normally you would drag in the skeletal mesh, but if you're just doing one animation, very simple, you can just drag it in like that. And you can scale it. Let's take a look. There he is doing the chicken dance. Not bad. Never mind that chipmunk floating around in the back. Let's put him into the scene where we would place a monster. I haven't quite really figured out my entire game yet, but I'm getting closer. You may recall there was a Yeti and all kinds of things before. I wasn't really sure what the Megalophobia was going to be, but I'm thinking more, yeah, this island and a Cthulhu. Not this guy for the tutorial. He's a kind of different sea monster. He's not the Cthulhu that I'm going to be using for my game. But he's similar. He's greenish and slimy. Now, how I'm going to make it look like a monster coming out of the water water is very hard to do in VR, so it's not going to be ultra realistic. And we'll have to use some tricky lighting to make him look good, especially because this guy, I'm not gonna retexture at all. I'm just gonna play with the materials that were provided. And you can see with this guy scaled up and being underneath him like this, underneath his arms, that mesh is not animating particularly well. In Mixamo, you can download the animation without the skin. And in that case, the import will be a little bit different. You can just check import only animation and then choose the skeleton of your monster. Mine is called Chicken Dance Skeleton. I've imported a few different animations. You can see animation mode is set to animation asset in the character details. And then you can just drag in different animation sequences. I can try this one. You can see under his arms, again, those polygons are not moving particularly well. So I think any animations with the arms going up or to the side on this particular monster might not look great. And try some other ones. Like I said, you could generate a few other monsters in Meshy and maybe get a better shape. This guy, let's see how far we can get with this particular guy. Now you can see the material that Meshy gave us has all these nodes, and that's fine. Let's get closer actually and take a look at what we have. I'm going to delete all those nodes. You could just make a copy of the material instead of deleting their nodes. You never know, you might want to use that material. But I'm just going to drag the texture in, plug it into base color, and change the roughness. Or am I going to change it? 0.4, because he should look a little bit wet and shiny. He came out of the ocean fairly recently. And so that's just the texture and a little shininess. Maybe too shiny. Maybe too shiny. Let's try 0.5. These are all things we can change later. And like I said, I would take the monster into Blender and do some adjustments. This is a free program called GIMP, G-I-M-P. It's a photo editor, but you can make a normal map here. So I'm gonna just drag in that texture I got from Meshy of the sea monster. And just scale that down. I'm going to go to filters, generic, normal map, and boom, done. I think that's all fine. And I can export that. And that's going to give us, an appearance of bumpiness. Like a normal map. We used them in our landscape before. It looks like little bumps and dips in the texture. It's an illusion based on shading or something like that. And I don't know if you could see that there, but it did change. Let's zoom in and see. All right, there is a bit of bumpiness now. Here's the difference. There's without the normal map. And I'll plug it in again. Yeah, it does make a difference. Like I said, this creature is scaled up really big, so the texture is not going to look great. I think is that a 2K texture maybe? Even a 4K texture is not going to look great. 8K texture at that scale is not even going to help too much. There are other ways to texture this guy, and we'll talk about that later. But really, if you can get the right lighting, even this very basic creature with not even a high-res texture can look pretty good. Definitely play with the lighting. And we'll get into lighting and post-process volumes that help a lot with enhancing your characters and your props quite a bit. My real monster for this game will be Cthulhu, who has strange geometries, kind of like this guy, his polygon armpits. So let's see, if you click into the animation sequence, you can make some changes to the speed of the animation, which might help. For a large creature, they move a bit slower than normal human size. Again, make sure you're using the animation asset, not a blueprint. And you can make a blueprint if you want, but this is simple. It's just one animation at a time. You can also loop your animation. There's a checkbox for that. And we'll get into more advanced animation later. This is just quick and easy. Like I said, you could set up this monster in 15 minutes. From generating him from a prompt to him doing an animation in your level. Here's an animation montage that you can make if you want to string together a few different animations. It's still pretty simple. This is, again, not a blueprint. There's no state machine, which would be, his animations would depend on different variables of what's going on in the game. This is just my method of stringing together a few different animations. These are not going to match up, of course, because I didn't select animations that link together. The ending pose doesn't go into the beginning pose of the next one. You can blend them a bit using this, I believe, but not enough because my animations are not very streamlined. Like the chicken dance I tried to add in there, it starts with his arms up in the air, and there's no way you can really blend those together not using this method. We're keeping things very simple for now. Like you might just want some character in the background doing a loop of a few different things. Again, make sure you're using animation asset mode to drag in your animation montage. I don't know why he went floating up here like that. Let's see what happens. So that's the idle breathing going into the roar. That roar is really bringing out his armpit polygons. And that montage will loop because I told it to. This is my Cthulhu monster for my game, and I can't really decide. I like the material that was provided by Meshy. It sort of pops a little more than the one that I make with just the normal map and the texture. I don't know. It depends what the lighting is like, I think, which one is going to look better. Like mine, I think maybe doesn't look great in this light, but it can look more realistic depending on the lighting. Well, here they are in very bright light. Still kind of bright, even though there's a starry sky now. I think it looks pretty faded, actually. Remember the pink version, the cute pink version? I actually really like him on this scale. It's about twice as big as a human. He's doing the thriller dance. That was on Mixamo, Thriller Part 2. And the texture definitely looks better at this scale. Even his weird polygons aren't acting. Oh no, I made it really big there. I did a very simple animation of the pink alien or sea monster, whatever. For the final game, you would open the monster in Blender or some program like that and alter the mesh to add separate eyeballs, and that way the monster can look at you and look around. It will make it more realistic, and a mouth that can open and close. Remember, we had different candidates for a monster. I actually textured some of the other ones. We chose this guy. None of these three were viable because of the bent legs and the proportions. But we did have these characters that might have worked out better. Who knows? Okay, this was our guy that we chose. Okay, here's one of the other candidates. I quite like him, except this bit down here. He would not animate properly with his fingers that big. I love the tail, though. That was our guy that we chose. Let's see. There's this guy. This guy. He's nice, too. Again, I don't think he would animate well because of the proportions. Yeah, because look, I tried it and it's pulling strangely. There was also this guy. He looks kind of like ours, except our guy has some spikes, and I don't really think I need to be seeing that in VR in a gigantic monster. Gigantic backside.